Tech, everyone. The experience I had in the past 4 years has been priceless. The small community we have built, the progress we have made, and doing things most people our ages aren't able to do is simply a gift in itself. But most importantly, the greatest thing about this 4 year long journey is that it's only begun, and we are getting to know many people and making good friends. We may be a small community as of this moment, but the important part of this now production team is that we're still having fun and we're getting to enjoy our privileges as a collective. The story of Takeoff Tales has been a bumpy road with many shifts in attitude over the years. To honor these past 4 years, I think it's time to tell our story. 4 years ago, I was a middle schooler about to enter the 8th grade. I had sometimes made videos on my student account that had a lot of student related content on it until it was terminated in 2020. Back then, in 2017, I was good friends with Dara, and when I first started out this channel, it was meant to just be like wherever I wanted to upload. I didn't take uploads very seriously. I just wanted to share some content. So the content back then was mostly gaming, a poor animated intro, and some few funny short clips. Just all things I really liked. Many of the very old 2017 content was removed from YouTube, but because I felt like the quality of it and my performance wasn't really good standards, and it was kind of embarrassing. Later that year, in the 8th grade, I had a theater project of creating a short movie. This is where everything changed. It's fine to say that it all began from me being a silly idiot. But it did, because when I got home and started digging for ideas and props, I found an old Takeoff Elmo doll that I had when I was a toddler. And then, everything started to come together. The Haunting of Elmo became. It was a fun idea that even got my little sister wanting to jump in and help make this goofy video. And when I presented it in class, it was perhaps the best video in our middle schooler minds. It was goofy and hilarious. From there, some of my friends in the class were interested in seeing a sequel to it, and more content. From there, we formed a small team. It was then the Takeoff Cast was unofficially formed, and we operated through talking in class and setting up times planned for recording or features for the content. We really tried to put more effort into the Haunting of Elmo finale, and from there we started talking about more projects. The Haunting of Elmo is a very special series to me. It is definitely outdated and full of cringy stuff for my 14-year-old self. But at the same time, it's the series that formed everything. At the end of the day, the Haunting of Elmo was a success. It achieved its goals of being goofy, funny, fun to make, and proving that it was possible to make. Following the Haunting of Elmo and entering 2018, I was starting to use Discord more and more, and I made a server for my friends, originally called Takeoff Server. As I began adding people, I realized I could utilize the platform to communicate to my friends to make more content. It was then when I got some of my theater classmates and some of my other friends from school to join the server, and this is when I renamed it, the Takeoff Cast, where it was officially declared on Discord on February 28th, 2018, and then following a remake of the server on March 7th. Not long after making the server and declaring ourselves the Takeoff Cast, we reached sub goals of 10 and 25 subs, where we decided to make a fun sub special, where it would be a video where we die 100 times. This began the 100 Deaths project, the last major project we worked on before Wunderkatze. It was a lot better than the Haunting of Elmo. It introduced Melvin, the Wizard of Potatoes, which is arguably one of our best characters we have so far. It had way better editing that really took advantage of green screen edits and effects, and it was even more silly than the Haunting of Elmo. The 4-part series was watched a lot more than Haunting of Elmo 2, and the small team was at its peak. 100 Deaths was also a project building off our created or favorite memes with Gary, Big Smoke, Melvin, and so on. But it was also trying to focus more on our story with Gary, taking the idea of Gary DeFosh and making a more dramatic story, which we actually have a lot of plot written for. This project has never seen the light of day, but it's still a possibility that we could work on in the future. During the production of 100 Deaths, we also introduced another minor project called Crackhead Combat, being the goofiest thing we have ever worked on. The original part was making fun of Mortal Kombat and other fighting games, But we wanted to be even more extra and make an actual video out of it, being Crackhead Combat 2, Episode 1. It was extremely goofy and well edited for our experience back then. It didn't receive the same feedback as 100 Deaths was getting, and the rest of the cast besides the few who worked on it weren't as interested in it as compared to the 100 Deaths series. We had ideas for the plot with CHK, but with time going by and the content becoming outdated and cringy, it's unlikely that we see a revival of the series or Crackhead Combat 3. There was also lots of gaming content going on, running the 90s montage, starring Twitch, but however, following the completion of 100 Deaths marked the end of the first generation, the Foundation, and we then entered the second generation from 2019 to 2020, called the Cold Days. At this point, the cast was becoming unorganized. Some of us were entering high school, others had other things going on in their lives, and mostly it was cold because there was less activity going on in the server. During the second generation, we tried to hype up content that the end of 100 Deaths was referring to, and keep our memes and gaming content going. We also reached 50 subs during this time, but mostly the cast was struggling. We tried fixing our problems by adopting a council. However, the council members were also busy with their own things, and had little activity there. We then turned to democracy, and started electing cast focuses through voting polls. During this focus election, our results were minor content, which was content that could be made solely, and had members work on their own pace, and do what they want. This only increased cast inactivity, as there was less sense of importance in what we were doing, and we started to feel like everything was dying. I started to realize that trend in May 2019, and then started working on stories for a year and a half. In 2020, I started to get really concerned with the results of the election and how they weren't going to change anything. It was a hard year and I grew frustrated. I started taking breaks from making content to focus more on school. So when I came back later that year, I founded an underground council of our server to focus on plot, team planning, and other hidden agendas. I also tried to push more engagement and content out. One of the best was the superpowers debates. However, these attempts weren't working. I decided to need something bigger than how we usually operate in order to save the team. I started organizing my underground council with story ideas from the past year, and we started picking easy ones to do that would be fun to work on. Then, by New Year's of 2021, we declared Project Revival, marking the beginning of our third generation. Revival. The entry into this generation was the most revolutionary for the cast. I vetoed the elected focus of minor content and said that the team needed to work together with a shared goal or functionality will crumble. So, with Revival, I said that we were going to tackle an animation, something new for us, and way more workable than a live action at this point. Because the whole planning thing and like the meetings and the whole virus going around, doing a live action at this point is kind of way too difficult for us. We held an election of 2 stories that we could work on. Then Wunderkatze won. We then got to work on it, and I started splitting up the cast into teams to tackle each section of content for the animation, being editing and animation, art and backgrounds, music, sound design and singing, voice acting, writing, advertising and growing, and lastly, organization. These departments over the past few months have grown and become even more effective at making content for the animation. Seeing their efficiency, I effectively turned a cast into a production team. Wunderkatze is in its production phase now and is still on the way, estimating to be a few months. Likely past the planning of November, but what matters is that we're taking our time and giving the best quality we can for it. That's where we've gotten in 4 years. We're on a roller coaster ride, and this ride has only just started. As we're still in school and trying to figure out the best way to operate while focusing on academics and facing challenges, but unlike the cold days, we're seeing lots of progression, and we are stronger than ever as a team. There is so much coming in the future along with Wunderkatze, but until then, I'll see you guys later.